I've had this conversation with Jane Savills, and they would say the same, that the soul is infinitely ancient. It's had infinite number of incarnations, not just on this planet, but on infinite numbers of other worlds, right? And it will in the future, whatever happens to this planet, whatever happens to you in this incarnation, you have an infinity of future incarnations to look forward to. It's important, therefore, that we study ethics in this lifetime. We reach as high a level of enlightenment as we can, so that we increase the quality of our future incarnational process, where we go from here. We can do that by reflecting on all our past lives and on our past mistakes. We all make mistakes. We've all been there and done it, and done the wrong thing, either subtly or grossly. But the cosmos, Allah, who is the name in Arabic for the totality of the whole system, is so spacious and gracious that we're given the space to improve. It's like, we get a detention. I mean, as a teacher, I have to think of it like this. We get given a detention if we're really naughty. But in that, we do something useful set by the teacher to improve ourselves. We're let back into the classroom to then prove that we've learned, that we can be better. I think that's the kind of what goes on in the interlife period and then in the reincarnation period. We gradually, each of us, go up the spiral of moral betterment that leads to our eventual enlightenment. And our job as philosophers, intellectuals, if we're awake, is to try and understand the process, study the evidence for that process, which is there in past life regression and near-death experience. This is leading-edge transpersonal psychology, and we've got to stop ignoring it, as some materialist people still stuck in the old days of Pavlov. They're at a very primitive level of psychological awareness. If you look at the actual evidence that's come in since Maslow and Wilber and others, and Dean Radin and people at the Institute of Noetic Studies and so on, that are doing, the psyche is far more complex and rich than Pavlovian, behaviorism even can comprehend. And we have to realize that behaviorist narrative was a narrative constructed during the early mechanization of the planet, the first era of computers, the first era of nuclear war potential, as a way of shutting down discourse about morality and ethics. If you rule out there is no consciousness, no ethics, no soul, nothing, well then Stalin can carry on doing his business, and so can all the other mini Stalins, right, the Maos. And their right-wing opponents, the Hitlers and the Francos. Well, no, let's have the soul back into history, and let's have infinity theory at the heart of that, understanding that karma is the way that information is stored and carried by the soul from lifetime to lifetime. That leads in turn then to enlightenment theory, which I've talked about, with the pluralization of enlightenments. There's no one model. The planet doesn't have to decide whether it's going to become Islamic or Christian or Jewish or Buddhist or Marxist or Hindu or Jain or whatever. We can be all these things simultaneously, because Gaia, the planetary being, is all these things simultaneously. Every tree on the planet is equidistant through its roots to the center of the planet. And each tree is a symbol of that full enlightenment potential. We all, as humans, have to become as wise as those trees. That's why, as a druid, go and sit by an oak tree or an elm or a lime tree like I have in the back here. It's an enormous lime tree, now in its full flower of beauty. These are, enlightened beings, trees, in my opinion, in their own tree way, right? Now, this comes to peace theory, because if we bring karmic theory and complexity theory and infinity theory into peace theory, then I think we can say as a planet, we'll make it. We will make it through. This is why I did my PhD in peace theory and transpersonal history, because I'm trying to give you the planet the tools to solve these binary conflicts that I started with at the beginning of this talk. That's the era that we should be growing out of. We are profoundly interconnected as beings. Consciousness is a universal phenomena. It is an indwelling aspect. The noosphere, as Teilhard de Chardin called it, is inhabited by the birds, my swifts that come every summer from Africa and back, the plants, the trees, the fish in the lake, my cat. The whole ecosphere inhabits this noosphere, of which I too am an honorary member as a human, and we should be in wonder with it. I think that state of wonder is absolutely essential. So when we do that and we surrender the I, the ego, you see, you can't reach infinity theory with an ego. Ego is fixed, it's stuck, it's me as opposed to you. My culture as opposed to your culture, my identity as opposed to yours. And that's what is the logic of warfare. It's the logic of the military industrial economic capitalist system that is endangering the planet and that has probably caused COVID. Because I'm arguing in my research, and the reason I've called on scientists around the world to investigate, it looks to me this is a spin-off from bioweapons projects around the world. There's a silence. Nation states won't admit this because they're all colluding, they're all doing it. The French, the British, the Americans, the Russians, everyone's involved in this kind of research, but nobody's going to admit it. Well, we the people have to demand they do. There is a United Nations Bioweapons Convention. The UN has the authority to investigate every single bioweapons capable lab on the planet, and it should do so immediately. I've written to that effect, and it's a campaign. We need to get behind it. We the people actually own the UN. The UN is our spokesperson for universal values that I've been talking about in this lecture. Some of the Secretary Generals like Dag Hammarskjöld have intelligently understood every single word I've said. And as I tell you, I've spoken twice at UN headquarters. We have to reactivate the universality within the UN, founded by a great president, Roosevelt. It was his baby. To insist that these petty little Stalin types who are seizing power all over the place just do their duty and actually find out what's causing this COVID. So we'll only do that if we get a place beyond ego. And inviting you, my friends, to enlightenment. In your own time, in your own way, in your own system, be it Kabbalistic, Sufi, Druid, Hindu, Jain. The beauty of it is it can be all of these, right? The more you study, the more you walk into the forest, the more you find the beauty of the trees. They're all made of wood. That's the incredibility of it all. Okay, and as the Quran says, everything is passing, everything is impermanent, but the face of God endures forever. The face of the beloved endures forever. Now that is the Sufi or Quranic way of saying that everything is impermanent, the complexity of everything is in flux, as Heraclitus said, but the face of God endures forever. It's the surah I'm commenting on at the moment, very beautiful one. And that's why ultimately enlightenment wins. It takes time sometimes, but we will get there. This is why I'm, as a scholar, setting up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for the Middle East, because a lot of truth needs to be spoken there. It's why I'm setting up on 9/11 this year the International Historical Commission of Inquiry into 9/11, because the truth has never been told about that event, and it was used unlawfully to invade Iraq and destroy a sophisticated culture in Saddam's socialist Islamic Ba'ath-run sort of ideal of Islamic socialism, which the powers that were behind 2003 wanted to destroy. Kind of neocons that had taken over control in Washington had their own fanatical neo-imperialist agenda, thinking mistakenly they were doing it for Israel, but of course they weren't. This blowback, when this knowledge is revealed, is very bad for Israel, because they should be still a voice for peace, rationality and non-violence in the Middle East. That's what Israel is supposed to be doing, is fighting with itself in the inner jihad for justice and truth to reign, which is the kingdom of God, the kingdom when we realise what the Torah actually means. That's why the most religious of all the Jews won't fight in the army, they won't support the Israeli state and its militarisation. They won't have anything to do with that, because that's not the kingdom of God. That's just another kingdom like any other. That's becoming like another Philistine kingdom. No, what we should be doing is moving all our states, including Britain and France and Israel and Russia and China, to a place of non-violence, where non-violent peace diplomacy becomes the first response to any conflicts. For that, we need peace departments with equal funding to military defence departments in every country, so that, the Prime Minister of the day, conflict breaks out in country X, they ring the Ministry of Peace and they say, can we send a team of mediators? Can we send a team of non-violent trainers? Can we send a team of peace scholars in? It's a lot cheaper than bombing the thing and, having to pick up the pieces from shattered cultures. Okay, so that's where I'm at, and that we have the Mary Magdalene conference coming up on the 22nd of July. That's in about 3 days' time. You're welcome to listen into that if you send me your email and a request. I'll send you the Zoom details if there's space. It will be a very interesting conference. And it's starting from that place of not knowing, as I say. We don't know where they put the body of truth. We are all like Mary Magdalene. We're all weeping because truth has gone from this planet. And we have to find it. We have to find that lost body. I want to finish by reading a couple of things. The Mary Magdalene Daily Devotional is here in the Museum of the Muses as a present from Joan Clark, who's an American scholar from Texas, I think, which is tragically, they're now being really hit by COVID. She is a wonderful woman who came and spoke here a couple of years ago at the Mary Magdalene Studies Day. And she's an aromatherapist and perfumier who makes amazing scents that she thinks goes back to the time of Mary Magdalene herself, and that she was like the aromatherapist to the disciples, which is why she's always shown holding the kind of holy oils, and traditionally she applied them to Christ on occasion. Well, aromatherapy is very powerful. It's a healing force, and it is possible that she was the guardian of that knowledge. Anyway, that's Joan's view, and I think it's very interesting. She gave a talk about it. And she's channeled these daily teachings from Mary Magdalene, the living spirit, for each day of the year. And today, the 19th of July, is as follows. I am the maiden of light, the source of truth and the presence of the holiness that not only lives inside of you, but awaits your remembrance. Now that's the verse she channeled from Mary Magdalene. She comments as follows. Mary Magdalene was called the Maiden of Light, for she carried on the work of her beloved. This is also your birthright. You are the light in the world. Let her guide you in accessing this light that you may have forgotten as part of your true essence. In your journal, if you want to carry today's message in your heart, note what in the message stands out for you. Bring it forth throughout the day, being present to what it seeks to share with you. Today, proclaim your own light and ask the Magdalene to shine hers forth, so that you can feel it within you. I love that little teaching. Thank you so much, Joan. This is a beautiful book. Everyone should get a copy. You can Google it. Joan will send it to you, and it's not expensive. She spoke, as I say, at our conference a couple of years ago, and may be joining us online as part of the sort of Zoom circle for this coming event, which has some great speakers lined up. email me, I'll send you the details. And I hope we'll be able to solve the mystery of where this body of truth has gone, where it's been hidden. I hope in this talk today I've given you some clue as to where it might be found. Right, I'm now going to finish with a poem of my own, just to wrap things up, and then I'm going to hand over to a visitor I have here in the castle, sorry, in the Museum of the Muses, who's come all the way from, London. She's of part Japanese origin, part Indian, and so on. And she'll be talking a poem by a famous Palestinian poet to close our event. But first I'm going to read one of my own poems, just to kind of finish my bit, and then I'm going to hand over to Nisa. This is a very short one. I wrote it in Turkey. And then we'll do two poems. One is called Is There a Country Yet? And the other is Homer, Reminiscences. So these are two short poems, and then I'm going to finish and hand over to Nisa. So, is there a country yet? I wrote this in Turkey. Is there a country? Is there a country yet for peace, which has its soul straight and its mind on fire for thought? What if, instead of landing warriors at Troy, Agamemnon had brought flowers and a wink in his eye? What if, instead of landing troops at Gallipoli, the Allies had brought bright scarves, woolen hats, story songs, wooed the women with tales of old, and sat amid the fires into the night? Is there a country? Is there such a country for peace yet? That's the first poem. The second poem I wrote on the same trip to Turkey. I was totally blown away. I'd never been to Troy before. I'd read Homer. I knew all about Troy ever since boyhood. But here I actually was sitting on the mound, looking at the archaeological remains and going to the museum in Istanbul where they've got a lot of it. And I just was totally blown away because as a poet and a kind of psychic, I tune into these places. And this is the poem that came out. It's called Homer, Reminiscences. Can you hear the call whipped up and the spray? Can you hear the conference of the gods stirring in the winds? They are discussing our doom and our weird. Listen carefully. Where fleet-footed dawn raises skyward, trailing her beautiful aura of silk clouds, tinged with orange fire, the bright clash of glistening light comes after. In those few moments when Helios puts on his sunplate glory, all is hushed. Even the birds look on in rapture. Blind am I to such ethereal enlovements. To me is given to see only with mind light, and my hearing is sharp as the blades whisper. To me is given only to speak forth between realms, a messenger of light, going to and fro between the mundane and the magnificent. All poets and bards who have come after ours walked onwards in the footsteps of my own inward seeing. I see the world as whole, rayed through with destiny, each in its sphere performing daily miracles. From dawn to dusk each moment is someone's awful spell for our upraising. I sit here, resting, content, knowing my words have survived. Other pens and voices must take up the never-ending story.